The level of frustration of Nigerians over worsening power supply problems lately is better imagined than experienced following, in particular, the collapse of several power plants in the country, coupled with constraints of procuring gas to run some others. The situation has adversely impacted on industrial productivity and worsened unemployment, leading to escalation in the cost of production. As when firms rely on self-generation, industries are folding up as a result of their situation. Lack of reliable power, according to the World Bank, is significant constraint for citizens and businesses, resulting in yearly economic losses are estimated at $26.2 billion. That's about 10.1 trillion naira, which is equivalent to about 2% of the country's GDP. In a recent report by the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NERC, the commission is set to introduce another tariff review for the 11 distribution companies in the country. The extraordinary tariff review is as a result of changes in inflation, foreign exchange, gas prices, available generation capacity, and capital expenditure. The current challenges the business community are faced with, and the big question is now is what will the impact of an increment in electricity tariff on businesses operating in the fragile economy be? One, well, a lot of questions begging for answers. How will this affect the generality of Nigerians that are already paying more for PMS, paying more for inflationary pressure all around? Let me just take this further. I have live in the studio the Vice President of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Gabriel Dahosa. Thank you very much and good afternoon to you, sir.
Thank you.
It's good to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
Yes. Before I go to saying how we'll react to this, definitely we know this is more of negative. Recently, the World Bank also came up with a report that many Nigerians are living without not even about 12 hours of supply in a day, which it's been in the news, and reactions and counter reactions have been coming that way. What would you say to you, the level of our power sector, before we go into how it affects businesses? With all of the efforts being made by government, the CBN is still injecting funds. This week, funds were still injected for metering. What's your assessment of the overall sector?
Well, the sector is in the problems that is the result of 40 years of neglect, 40 years or more of essentially abandoning that industry. Until perhaps the last 5-10 years, there was hardly any investment in that sector. Until we started privatization, that sector was really more or less left and people were doing self-generation. Now that we started to reform the sector, fundamentally there was a defect which is yet to be corrected, because you have three sections in the sector. You have the generation, the transmission, and the distribution. And when we started privatization, we privatized generation and distribution, and we left the middle that keeps the whole pool together, still in government hands, still run like any other government agency, for which reason we privatized the other two and we left the middle. So to expect a significant improvement with that structure is really not realistic. So fundamentally, that is where all these problems that we have. Because if you want to privatize an industry like telecoms, you go the whole hog. You privatize everything.
Yes.
And all the three players, the generators, the transmission, and the distributors, we all move in the same direction and try to solve their problems. Now you have generation generating about twice the power that the transmission can carry to distributors. So there's a lot of stranded power. All the power generators, they tell you this is what we produce. Transmission can only take about half. And distribution needs 10 times, 20 times the power that this transmission brings to them. So you have a sector, an industry that is fundamentally defective. And you cannot solve the problem in bits and pieces. You want to deal with it, deal with transmission, get it out of your hands. We put it in the hands of those who are in that business, and then we solve the problem holistically. Generation is in a fairly good shape. They are continue to expand generation.
Yes.
We really don't have a major generation problem at this time, since we can't consume what we even produce.
Generate.
So the issue is transmit everything that is produced to distributors. Distributors has the capacity to send it to homes. Distributors have their own issues with their distribution infrastructure. That they have their own, which they are yet to deal with fully. But until you deal with the structure of the industry, all these problems will just be giving symptoms of that's some very substantial defect. So we need to deal with that. And then we now come back to say, how fast can distribution improve their services? Transformers, meters, maintenance. If there's rain, an electric cable breaks down, how many minutes or hours does it take? Those issues can be discussed when you have an industry that is properly wired to operate efficiently. The industry is not wired to operate efficiently now because you have two sides that are running very fast, are willing to run, are capable of running fast. Then you have somebody in the middle that is just he's neither running nor
no. So I can imagine.
So when we complain about all the issues, we ignore the fundamental structure issues that needs to be addressed.
So the generation and private players are active in that sector, and the distribution, clearly we know that too, the private guys are playing a role. But also, yes, as much as I also want to agree with you, because I followed the privatization process from the onset, and I know that there was a fundamental problem with that agreement and all of that. But some also argue that even for those that have been privatized, there are some contractual agreements reached from the side of government and the side of the private investors too that are not met 100%. Now that could also help us at least spring up a little bit.
Yes, of course. A contract says you should do something. But that contract assumes that the environment for you to do it exists. And most of us forget now that the distribution companies are still 40% owned by government. Only 60% is sold. So when you say this company has not performed a contract, you are talking of the two owners. The 60% owner are the private people and the government people who are 40%. So there are violations of contractual obligations, but the fundamental issues are what we are talking about. If I generate, I expect to be paid. But my products cannot be picked up because somebody cannot lift it off. I have not violated any contract. I just need to be paid. And the generators are saying, whatever your problems, I need to be paid. And they are not paid. And so they are forced to violate some of the, because I cannot pay a bank as a generator. I borrow monies to generate power. I'm not being paid. And I cannot pay the bank. The bank withdraws my facility. I have to default on some of the things that I do.
Sure.
So there are violations, but in most cases, you cannot say these violations are deliberate. They are created by the environment in the industry that needs to be fixed. Once we fixed those, everybody in the generation and distribution has an incentive to be efficient because they want to make profit by providing their services of generation or distribution. Make profit for themselves, pay back their bank loans. So they have a huge incentive to be efficient. And their being efficient simply means consumers are happy.
Yes.
Because if I get power 24 hours, I'm happy. The distribution companies are willing to do that. For them to do that, transmission needs to supply them the power. They don't supply distribution the power. Distribution people will violate contracts because they can't distribute what they don't have. So when they don't, you say they are supposed to distribute so much power, after 5 years, they should, this level, 12 hours per day, 15 hours per day, and so on. To start with, I don't have the power coming through the transmission. So how do I not violate a contract? So there are violations across the board, but the way to look at it is go back to the drawing board and say, what does it take to change the ownership structure of the transmission company? The received wisdom now is that it's not another 100% privatization. You have a very successful model like the Nigeria LNG. Government needs only sell about 51% of the transmission company. Keep 49% and get world-class transmission companies around the world to buy 51%. And so government is still a very strong partner. But they bring in all the resources to rapidly grow the transmission so that every single kilowatt hour of power generated per day goes quickly through the transmission lines to distribution. And then we can hold distribution people responsible for not performing. At this point, the distribution people are taking all the heat because they are the ones that interact with us as customers.
Yeah, true.
But all the problems behind them, we don't see, or we know, but we don't really appreciate how serious it is. Because as a distribution company, if I don't generate enough sales and cash flows, my banks will not support me to grow. But if I am generating a lot of sales and my banks see my sales performance and my cash performance, they will give me money to buy meters. Distribution companies can buy meters if their cash flows are rising and the banks see that they can easily pay for these meters. But they know that there is, let's say, 10 megawatts of power, or 10,000 megawatts of power available in Nigeria. The banks know that. But what the distribution companies are distributing is less than 4,000 megawatts. So there's 6,000 megawatts just stranded there.
Just stranded.
And the banks are saying, well, we have to keep charging you interest on what you borrowed, and you have to increase your sales. To increase your sales, you need more meters. They don't have money to buy meters. So you have a chicken and an egg situation. Customers don't want to pay these billings, these crazy bills. Give me a meter. I want a meter I will consume and pay. Distributor companies don't have money to buy meters. They don't have money to buy meters, so they cannot increase their legitimate sales. And so back to the banks, hammering them with interest charges, and then generating companies are owing the banks because they generate power every day, 10,000 megawatts, and 6,000 goes to waste.
Now, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, as the regulator, has come up with the multi-year tariff order, which is usual. It's normal, and in a normal climate, if we have steady supply, no one is going to complain about this. And they are set to do another review. Now, how does this come to you? And what do you think? I've seen a lot of reactions online, in the newspapers, even on NERC's platform. People have been reacting. No. What's your reaction to this? And how do you see this impacting businesses at this time? We know what they are going through.
Well, you can't ask people not to react. It's like it's raining. It is just raining in that sector. So you have to react. You are getting wet and you are not happy with it. But the reality is that these problems are not going to walk away because we complain, because we react.
Must act.
In any case, for the industries, their cost of power is already extremely high. Much higher than whatever tariff is coming on. Because what they pay for self-generation is much higher than this. So the real problem is not the new pricing. The real problem is availability. So if you increase prices and it's available, nobody's going to complain. In any case, these new MITO structures are graduated. So for the low income, low consumers of electricity, their pricing will remain the same, more or less. They are not going to pay more. But for the commercial and industrial consumers, they are going to pay more. They are willing to pay more. But what they are saying is, I pay more, I get better service. Longer hours, but also quality. We don't need power that goes up and down and destroys our equipment. So all these problems is not really about price. It's not that the public generally doesn't want to pay a higher tariff. But pay a higher tariff, ensure it is consistent, so I don't have a double jeopardy. I pay high for main electricity. And I still have to buy a generator. More. I still have to buy diesel.
Inverters
and maintain those equipment, which broke down quite often because the power supply is very erratic. They don't tell you we are going to cut power in 1 hour's time so that you can shut down and prepare for it. They just, in the middle of what you are doing,
they cut it off.
And all your equipment has to go. And you have to now buy stabilizers and breakers and all kinds of things. So the costs are just going up because of the issues we have in the system. And trying to solve the problems in bits and pieces is not going anywhere. So we first of all deal with the main structure. And then every section of the industry, the three sections of the industry, can now be running at the same pace, speaking the same language. Because if transmission were a private run, controlled business, by now, they will be able to sit with generation and distribution and say, what are the bottlenecks For example, metering. You don't need government to really buy meters. If transmission is efficient, the banking industry can see the cash flow.
Yeah.
That from generation, money is coming, from transmission, money is coming, from distribution, money is coming. And they will finance the entire electricity industry. Just like the telecom companies. They don't have problems raising money to grow the telecom industry.
You can see the funds coming in.
Everybody can see the cash flow in the telecom industry. Yeah. You can, in fact, borrow against the next 10 years' income from the telecom industry.
A lot of projections.
Because everybody can see where the money is flowing. Yes. But today in the electrical industry, you only see the bottlenecks. You see the flows in generation so long as they are paid. In transmission, you don't see, because it's the government is backing the payment for their services, and nobody can control or regulate or monitor that. It's still government. So long as you have that structure, those problems are predictable. They will remain, absolutely remain. We need to deal with that, and then the three parties will come to the table and begin to address the issues. Generation is easy to ramp up. It's very easy, much easier than the other two to raise capital. In an industry that is very transparent and cash flows are easy to see, they can raise money to generate, knowing that once the consumer pays, distribution will pay transmission and generation. But now, what consumers are paying is not enough to pay the other two, because they are not getting enough to pay the, distributors need maybe 30, 40,000 megawatts in Nigeria. We generate 10, we distribute 4 or 5, and so the problems are just they are just sitting there. We can complain now until the fundamental structure of the industry.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I like your submission. Brilliant submission there, talking about the synergy and working together to address all of these challenges. But as we wrap up this segment, many businesses designated for Nigeria are already moving to Ghana. We know of the car manufacturers, we know of companies who can go on and on. This will continue to happen if something is not done as quick as possible. The economic sustainability plan, I think there's something it has to do with power too there, to generate power for households, I think, and all of that. What do you think? Are there any quick wins at the moment?
Well, essentially, the quick win we are saying is in the renewables.
Okay.
The renewables industry is growing extremely fast in Nigeria. Whether it is solar, whether it is wind, whether it's biomass, it is growing extremely fast. A lot of businesses are migrating to renewable energy, and particularly solar. Solar is easy to install. It's cheaper, about the cheapest in the long term, and so a lot of that is happening. The thing is, with Nigeria always is size. We are 200 million people. So if you provide power for additional 1 million people, you don't get the impact. The government is trying to do 5 million people now under the solar program.
Yes.
That's 5 million out of 200 million. So that is happening. But it's not so obvious because not many people have seen it. A number of universities have been covered by solar power. A number of teaching hospitals have been covered. A lot of private businesses are going solar now. There are a lot of solar power companies here in Lagos, around the country, that provide solar power as a service. You don't have to buy the equipment. They install it and you pay monthly as you use. So all those quick wins are there, creating a lot of profitable business. But because of the size of the problem, those efforts are not showing up in a big way. But if you talk to individual businesses that have applied those solutions, they are doing very well. And they are disengaging themselves. There's, of course, also gas-powered private power production. You can either have gas to your factory or to your estate to power your plant. You can have gas brought in lorries to your factory. So a lot of alternative solutions to the grid is going on. The issue is the pace at which those changes are happening, how fast we can do it, and then the enabling environment. Because again, the same investors that we are talking about, whether local or foreign, require the same conditions. Yeah. It's not just foreigners that are going to wherever else. If I can make more money in Ghana, why will I not go to Ghana?
Yeah.
So, but again, that is perhaps overstretched, because for every company that you mention going to Ghana, I can mention 5 companies that are here in Nigeria and that are coming to Nigeria. So it's okay to talk about it, but seriously, 1 or 2 companies going to Ghana is neither here nor there.
All right, it's a good way to leave it. Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, Vice President, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us and your thoughts. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, then.